Osarla Tashi Dele. That's Tibetan for Happy New Year. Today is the first day of the Lunar New Year, which corresponds closely with the new Aquarian year, which began just a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to mention that because a new year represents a new beginning, a cycle that has begun. And that's why in the West we've always symbolized the new year as a newborn child. But as the Master Samael told us in his writings, we can learn very little from birth. But from death we can learn everything. When there is a birth, for example, a new year beginning, that beginning was only made possible by the ending of the former year. That great cycle of beginning and ending is at the basis of all things, on every level of nature. Everything begins and ends in great cycles, great circles or spirals. So no matter where we look in nature, at any level of the universe, we find beginnings and endings. In the midst of those beginnings and endings are great progressions or movements of energy. Those movements of energy form a continuum, a flow that has no beginning and no ending, but are instead a series of beginnings and endings. Our mind struggles to conceptualize the infinite, and yet time is that. It is an infinite circle. It has no beginning, it has no ending, but it is a series of beginnings and endings. That clue is at the very heart of gnosis. The comprehension or cognizance of birth and death. Not only birth and death of a physical body, but birth and death of a soul, of a planet, of a universe. Death has many aspects, many facets. I know it's an uncomfortable subject, but it shouldn't be. In reality, for the serious Gnostic, death is the goal. Death is our crown. It is the crowning achievement of a Gnostic. That's not to say that the Gnostic seeks death in and of itself, for itself, meaning that we just want to all rush out and be killed. That's not the meaning. Because at the same time that the Gnostic seeks death, the Gnostic preserves life and does everything in his or her power to protect life, including their own. What the Gnostic aspires towards is a perfect death. Is a death at the right moment, at the right time. Because that perfect death is the gateway to real existence. The existence that we have now is not real. It's an illusion. What we see as existence is fundamentally mistaken. What we see and perceive and taste and touch and hear is all filtered by subjective elements in our psyche, and thus we do not see reality. Through a perfect death, we gain that perception of what is real. The goal of the Gnostic is to achieve that perfect death and to prepare for it every day. it can be said that gnosis is training for death. And it is a process of dying. For the real Gnostic who's practicing seriously, whether that person is called Gnostic or a Buddhist or a Christian is irrelevant. By Gnostic we mean someone who is acquiring spiritual experience. For that person, their spiritual process is a process of dying, not physically, but psychologically. A continual process of radical death, in which all that is illusion, all that is false, dies. And what is born is truth, cognizance of what is real. In order to begin to experience that process of death, we need to study death. We need to understand death and not avoid it. Culturally, we avoid death. The very subject of death makes us uncomfortable. We do our best to ignore it, to avoid it. And this is to our great detriment. The elderly should be respected and honored, and yet they aren't, because we don't want to face our own mortality. We prefer not to deal with older people, and when we do, we want to deal with them as quickly as possible and be done with it. And that's why in Western culture we find the tendency to put older people somewhere where we don't have to see them all the time, and put sick people where we don't have to see them all the time. In traditional times, in ancient times, the sick and the elderly were cared for in the home, and now we don't do that. We want to put them somewhere where we don't have to see them. And this is a signal of our ignorance, of our aversion to reality, because we don't want to deal with the fact that we ourselves will die. We have no cognizance of death, no comprehension of death, but we have a lot of ignorance of death. The Gnostic tradition teaches and emphasizes the importance of death because of its great importance in the spiritual path. To be a truly experienced spiritual practitioner, you cannot avoid death. In fact, you have to embrace it. For the real spiritual practitioner, someone who's got experience, in other words, a true Gnostic, death ceases to be a source of fear. Contemplate that. Because for most of us, death is a source of great fear and uncertainty. We are terrified because we ignore. We don't know what will happen. We're very afraid. And we're afraid because of our attachments. We're afraid because of pain. We're afraid because we don't know what will happen. We don't want to lose our families and our loved ones. We don't understand what death is. Help us overcome that, to not be afraid of death, but instead to look forward to it. Not to rush towards it, but to use each day to prepare for the inevitable. We will die, and none of us know when. In normal circumstances, if we knew that a big event was coming, we would prepare. If we were going to make a trip or a journey, we would do everything we need to prepare in advance so that when the moment comes that we have to depart, we're ready. And yet, who among us has prepared for death? Which is a great journey that everyone here will take. And we're not prepared. Real gnosis is about preparing daily, being ready, so that when death arrives, we're not caught surprised. Not avoiding it, not ignoring it, but ready for it. In this way, we can see that a prepared Gnostic, someone with real spiritual experience, sees death as an opportunity. as an opportunity to move on to something better. We're very attached to life, but we don't comprehend life. We're very afraid of death, but we don't comprehend death. If we comprehended life, we would understand that life, as it is now, is a stream of suffering. And if we comprehended death, we would understand that death is an opportunity to transform suffering. This image shows a meditator in a hut or a small building that's constructed for meditation. With his eyes open, he is observing a body being consumed by wolf and birds. Most of us see this type of image and we feel repugnance, which is avoidance. Note that in yourself. That impulse to not look at it, to not see it. That impulse to not look at the reality of death is a sign of our aversion to death. It is a sign of our ignorance. The Gnostic needs to look squarely in the face of all experiences and neither avoid or indulge, but instead comprehend. This image represents a foundational teaching in Gnosis, and that is comprehension of the inevitability of death. This is why all students undergo an extended period of meditating, visualizing, imagining their own death. Not just once, but every day. To daily meditate and imagine one's own death. Most people, when they hear about that, think, that's so morbid. Why would you do that? It's only going to make you miserable. This is the reaction of the ego. The reaction of the I, which is our obstacle to enlightenment. The reality is, we will all die, but we don't realize it. We're not cognizant of it. We don't comprehend that. The evidence is abundant. If you knew you were going to die tonight, wouldn't your schedule change? Wouldn't your activities for the rest of the day be very different from what you originally intended? That proves that we lack cognizance of death, because it is 100% possible that any or all of us could die today. No one can disagree with that. None of us know when death's coming. This building could collapse. There could be an explosion of a gas main. There could be a war. There could be a bomb. There could be a disease. There could be any number of causes which at any moment can arrive without any influence from us, without our ability to overpower it or contradict it. Death can come like that. And the graveyards are filled with people who are very surprised by death. If we were cognizant of our own inevitable death, our behavior would be very different. This is why it's important to study death, to meditate daily on one's death. This is not simply to meditate and think to oneself, one day I will die. So I better be a better person. Spiritual. Practice more. It's fine to think this way, but the actual practice is to spend time visualizing the decay of one's body. Take a moment now. Feel this body. Become cognizant that it will die, that life will recede from it, and that all of its functions will stop. The blood will stop flowing, the breath will stop flowing, the brain will shut down, the organs will stop moving, and all of the heat will begin to recede towards the heart, and the body will become cold, and it will never move again. Do any of you feel terror? Fear? This is why you need to meditate. So that when the moment of your death arrives, you will not be afraid. The instant that you die, your state of mind determines what will happen to you next. If you die afraid, that fear will propel you. And you don't want that. We want to die cognizant, in harmony, peacefully, with a balanced psyche, so that as we pass through the doorway of death, we can enter into a new life cognizantly. You see, life is very complicated. Bring into your imagination now, life. Not just your life, all life, all that is living. Imagine all life on every level. Quanta, molecules, cells, organs, organisms, families, communities, societies, cities, countries, continents, planets, solar systems, galaxies, universes. Life is huge. It's very difficult to hold that in one's mind. The immensity of living, of all that is alive. But you see, as complex and beautiful and terrifying as life is, it is only one side of a great coin. When you flip that coin, you have death. And it is just as rich, complex, sophisticated, beautiful, and terrifying as life. But we completely ignore it. Every one of us, every human body we have ever seen will die and decay. And all the fluids and the guts and the organs will be dispersed. Sounds gross, but it's the fact. Moreover, when you really start to understand that, you realize how absurd it is that we're always lusting after corpses. Corpses that are walking around. Really, all of us are corpses. We just don't realize it. Everybody here will be a corpse. It's filled with filthiness, with pus, with excrement, blood, urine, all kinds of fluids and tissues that have gross textures, and all of us are carrying it around with us all the time. You realize that? You realize you're sitting in a bag of excrement? I know it sounds harsh, but it's true. Why do we think we're so great? We're avoiding the truth. Get to know the reality of this body. It is not as beautiful as you think it is. But we need it. We need it. We need it to be healthy, we need it to be strong, we need to take care of it and prepare ourselves so that when it dies, we can leave it consciously. Remember death.